The National Basketball Association playoffs continue, and they will do so without LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers, as LA goes down against the Minnesota Timberwolves in Game 5 of their series in Los Angeles, giving the T-Wolves a 4-1 series victory. Now, I would just like to state, I think that LA lost this series in Game 4. We talked about it on the show previously. The issues that the Lakers had in putting Minnesota away and only using their 5 guys and having LeBron and Luka beaten up and battered by the end of that game, so they're kind of dragging ass, allowing Minnesota to have that comeback. I think that was a real tactical disadvantage, and I don't think it's a surprise that now LeBron and Luka each end up getting banged up in this elimination game. I can understand the desperation of the situation, and I understand that in the playoffs you have to shorten your bench, but you still have to use it. And you cannot rely on the guy who is 40 and the guy who got traded away whilst being an all-time talent for physical issues. I don't think you can rely on those guys for a full no-sitting half, and I think that ends up costing them here. But this is... I'm going back and forth on how strongly to go in on this Lakers loss. Because on the one hand, this is bad, right? Like, you have a dynamic duo of LeBron and Luka. You have, like, one of the greatest players in the history of the sport, and a guy who could, by the end of his career, get into that conversation as well. That's how talented Luka Doncic is. He is genuinely one of the most talented human beings to play this sport ever. You have both of those guys, you should at least be able to play 6 games in the playoffs. So, on the one hand, when you have LeBron in year 22, and you are able to get the fleecing of the century and get Luka Doncic, and you only get to Game 5 of the playoffs, that is a failure. I don't think there is any way to look at it other than this is a failure for the Los Angeles Lakers. The future is set up well, but a big part of this is winning in the here and the now when you have LeBron James in year 22. And to be the higher seed, have home court advantage, and blow it in the ways that the Lakers did is almost inexcusable. And it goes back, it is tough to criticize the front office when they make the trade of the century, the heist of the century in acquiring Luka Doncic. But the ways that they lost were very predictable. Is that they couldn't defend in the paint at all, and they tried to make the move, and then the guy was hurt, and they ended up canceling it. And maybe they probably just should have overlooked a couple of things and made that move anyway, because it very much cost them in this. And so it is a bad loss for the Lakers. And you get Luka, so it's tough to say that this season is a failure, but this series is a failure, and a pretty big one from a Lakers standpoint. Now, you don't want to overreact, because this season overall, you get Luka. So I would probably put it in the win column. And you have gone from a team where in a couple of seasons it looks bleak to a team where in a couple of seasons you still have a guy who might at that point be the best player in basketball. And you now get to have him hanging out with LeBron, who excels in basically every area that you would want Luka to get improved in. And so while Luka does like to go off and have some fun in the summer, and such is his right to do, every moment he is on North American soil, I would have him attached to the hip of LeBron James to figure out what it is that makes LeBron, and how Luka can get to those levels as well. And so when you were talking about building out a foundation, there's obviously a solid one out there in LA, and it is 1 or 2 moves that can really help kind of solidify this thing and really get them to where they want to get to in probably a very quick time. So this feels really bad from a Lakers standpoint. On the one hand, it feels like a giant waste, but on the other hand, it did kind of feel like, I don't want to say just like a wasted season, because, well, you got Luka halfway through. That is a good thing to get Luka. That is in no way an inconvenience, but this team was not built to have Luka Doncic come in and lose Anthony Davis. This team was not maximized or built to really maximize what those two guys have. So now that you have a full offseason to really build a team around the strengths and weaknesses of those two particular players, I think that they're going to be in a very good shape. So I think this was, as much as you don't want to waste a year of LeBron at 22 years old still being amazing, I do still think there was a little bit of trial and error, and let's see what happens here. Look, Jackson Hayes was not good in the early part of this series. I don't think he was so bad that while Rudy Gobert is looking like Shaq in 01 against you, that you can't even throw him out there for a couple of minutes and, well, let's just see if he can slow the guy down a little bit. So, like, I think that JJ kind of got in his head a little bit. I think he coached like this was his first time coaching in the playoffs. I think he's going to grow from this as well. But I do think when you look at this series, all credit to Minnesota, and we'll talk about them in a second. And we'll have a lot of time to talk about Laker offseason as it starts now. But I think this was more the Lakers lost this series than Minnesota came out and took it. A couple of good things for the Lakers. I guess one, Rui Hachimura, I think, had a real good run of good performances here for Los Angeles. He became a real weapon. And it was to the point where I was, again, coming out of game 4, like, why not just let Rui and the Blowfish go for a couple of minutes and let LeBron and Luka sit over on the sidelines and just catch their breath and take a load off for a second so that they can freshen up and get back out there and be effective in winning time in that game, because Rui was playing that well. And so that is a real weapon that they have in Rui Hachimura, I think, going forward. The Reeves part of it is a little bit concerning. This is a tough matchup for him. It's a good Minnesota defensive team, but they took him away. They completely took Reeves out of this series, and Rui tried to make up for that a little bit, but Rui, I think if he made up for Reeves, he just barely did, and then now he needed to also add himself into that too. So that was a performance, and that was a series that I think Reeves now has to learn from a little bit. He is a really, really good number 3 option, maybe the best number 3 option in the playoffs. But this was a bad one for him. On the Minnesota side, while just saying that the Lakers lost this more than Minnesota won this was the type of performance that Minnesota dreams of. Not necessarily the Anthony Edwards part of it, but to be able to close out LeBron James and Luka Doncic while Edwards is having an off night and you miss like 18 shots in a row from 3. By the way, I don't think that's being hyperbolic. The fact that you can do that is monumental for this franchise. And I said before, like last playoffs, they make their way to the Western Conference Finals. So obviously a good run for this basketball team. But this felt like a real, again, leveling up series for Minnesota to be able to just really shut down the Lakers for extended stretches and be able to have a lot of success. And again, we talked about it coming into this series. The way that the Lakers struggle are the ways that Minnesota can attack teams. They lined up really well, and you kind of wish you would have saw that more and just not got hard eyes emojis for the star talent on the Lakers, because this was going to be a tough matchup for Los Angeles, and I think we just kind of got lost in it a little bit. But this is a grown win for Minnesota. That this is the type of response after last year that I think you would want, and maybe this run does come up one round short of where they were a season ago, but I think that this is still major progress for this basketball team. Anthony Edwards, look, he was brilliant in a lot of the games this season, or this series. He had an off night in that game, but he is still great defensively, that he is going to impact games, and he is still the threat on offense. And we talked about it, the fact that he has improved his shooting so much. Last game, not a great example of it, but the fact that he has improved that area of his game to the point that he has means that this kid is going to be very dangerous for a long time. But he is going to need some help, and they got it in that game. Julius Randle may have gotten himself, I am not kidding, I think an extra 0 on his next contract. Like, I think that this guy multiplied what he could get in free agency exponentially, just going right at LeBron. And you could see, like, him facing the Lakers, there was a little extra something to that one, right? Like, that was not a gracious ending. And there is, when you see how it went in New York and everything like that, I think you could see, like, this was, there was a bit on him. but he has turned into the best version of himself. At least he did in this series. You do get concerned about the ball stopping with him a little bit too much, right? Especially when you have Anthony Edwards, who kind of needs to get in that rhythm and be that just linebacker out on the court. But he wasn't just settling for jump shots, and that was the great thing. He was attacking, and he had a matchup where he could attack. LeBron James in his 22nd season is someone that Julius Randle can go at, and that gave him the confidence, and it just got him rolling. So this was the best version of Julius Randle and being that secondary option with Edwards when things kind of go sideways. And then Gobert was exactly what they needed him to be. And it is one thing to just say, yeah, he was facing a small Laker lineup that isn't built to handle things on the interior. But I would just like to remind you that when he was with Utah, those are the types of lineups that played him off the floor. And you got the slightest glimpse of it when the Lakers are shooting their way back into it. I think he was on Rui, and screen is set. So they switch. Reeves is coming around it, and Gobert sinks on it. And that is that's what happened every time with Utah, is you would just put him in the pick and roll, and you either get him away from the rim, and now he is I'm not going to say useless, because he is still a good defensive player, but his strengths are now gone. And so now you have the lane wide open for you to take advantage of things. Or he's going to get into a mismatch against a guard who, while he can kind of handle it a little bit, that's not necessarily where he thrives. And so he sinks off, but it's Reeves who has created nothing off of the dribble. And so it was a mistake. Reeves is able to hit a three. But you start to see that, it's like, okay, this could be a problem, because these are the types of lineups that gave him so much trouble in the past. And now two things happen. One, he has gotten better, and he is able to just take advantage of this. Also, this Minnesota team is, I think, quite superior to what he was dealing with out in Utah when he was coming up. And like the defensive side of everything, like he can come out and switch on a screen and kind of stay up high, because Anthony Edwards isn't getting blown by in the way Donovan Mitchell was, especially in playoff games when those guys were playing together, right? Like, he has more support, so it is more difficult to get to the rim. So, A, it's not as much of a factor. B, if it is, he has time to come back, help, and still make a play. But no, he was everything you could have hoped for Minnesota. And so now going into the next little bit here, I am going to be very fascinated. The next matchup, it's either the Warriors or the Rockets, and we'll talk about that in a second. Both are going to be difficult matchups. And one, I think, presents an interesting option and a unique opportunity for Rudy Gobert. The other, I think, is a really difficult matchup for him, given how well Şengün can handle things and how comfortable he is up high. Both of them, like, both teams have bigs who feel more comfortable outside. No, I'm not going to say Şengün is more comfortable outside, but at least comfortable outside. And going to force Rudy away from the basket. But the size that these guys can put out there in this is really, really interesting. And if they can get through and face Oklahoma City, that size could give OKC some issues as well. So a fascinating Minnesota team. And even if this year doesn't go as far or further than last year did, this is still a team that has solidified that they are for real in the Minnesota Timberwolves. Again, who could they face in the next round? That could have been decided last night, but it wasn't. Before we get into the breakdown of Rockets Warriors, would just love for anyone who is hanging out here today, if you could share this video and share around that we're doing the live streams here on Couch Potato Diary, put it out there, and really trying to grow this thing. And like I said, like I love hanging out in the chat. We got Deeds in the chat earlier over on Twitch. We've had a couple people over on Kick for a couple of times as well. I am very appreciative of everyone who is watching live. I would just like for you guys to have more people to chat with while I'm kind of rambling on and stuff like that. So let's share these videos and spread the word out there. That would really, really appreciate it.